Recording.
Hi all, I'm just going to give permission to record the session to a few members, so please hang in there with me and we'll get it going. Coach, your thoughts on today's game?
Yeah, of course, incredibly happy that we've bounced back from what was a disappointment last week. I think happiest most about the way the guys went about their business. On a tough afternoon, climate was difficult to deal with. This time of year, everyone realises that these earlier kickoffs can be, really challenging. We found some good moments to control the game, which is, of course, part of how we're trying to evolve and maybe appreciate the game a little bit more. We found some terrific moments to be creatively expressive and maybe a bit brighter and more positive, quick actions. And we also dealt with some challenges, some troubles, some changes in their group, three up top. And there were moments in the game where we had to knuckle down and we had to try and find a different gear and a different footing. And the guys were able to achieve all of that and work their way through to a terrific result.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now open the floor for questions. Tim, go ahead.
Hey, Gary, you mentioned that there were periods where you guys controlled the game, but it did seem like, especially in the first half, you guys were kind of absorbing pressure, but did manage to get a couple goals, both kind of on the counter. What was kind of the philosophy there, and how pleased were you that it worked out the way it did?
Well, I think when you play against a team that have got an almost identical shape and setup, you're always going to find it difficult, to see those outlets and areas and angles and overloads that you might normally get playing against a slightly different group. And of course, away from home, there's a little bit more of an aggressive feel and step in there, body language, if you like, from the home team. The first period, for sure, I thought, was, in all honesty, a little bit of a stalemate. There weren't an awful lot of chances either way. And it was really the first moment that Daniel took advantage of and changed the dynamic of the way the game was going to be played then. And I thought from then on, there were some moments that we dealt with the ball, managed the ball slightly better than we have done. There were a couple of moments that we built some pressure rather than trying to force the issue a little bit too much. And it just looked a little bit more confidence and composure about our play that ultimately, I think, led to the second goal late in the first half, and one that obviously took us into the break in a good mood.
Thank you, Coach. Drake, go ahead.
Yeah, Gary, congrats on the win. Wanted to ask you about the midfield. It looked, and they were able to be a part of the spotlight for a little bit, as we saw with Dax laying that goal off to Hani. Really, when it comes to DC maybe giving up the ball, it seemed as if there was so much space for Dax and Sean to really maneuver. What was the game plan behind obviously knowing what DC and how they want to play and putting Dax and Sean in positions to eventually make an impact on the attacking side of the game as well?
Well, as you well know, we've got some exceptional players in that central midfield area. And I just felt that Dax and Sean today might be the right pairing to get the most out of the game. But whilst their influence was easy to see, and I thought Dax was absolutely terrific on the ball and played real captain's role today. The inclusion of Randall in the group in what we would class as a midfield attacking role, I thought was instrumental in the victory. He's got that ability to change pace, to change gears. His choice to release Dax after breaking lines for the second goal was wonderful. You know, it would have been easy to have another touch and try and do a little bit more than he needed to. Of course, Dax's choice and deft touch was a difference in making that moment what it really in the end became. But there were 2 or 3 moments that I thought we had that included those guys that really made a difference in the group. And as I said, I think to the last question, it just looked like there was a little bit more composure in periods of the game. Not for 90 minutes, because it was a challenge. They're a competitive side. There was a lot of energy and a lot of front foot, mindset and nature from DC to try and get back in the game. So it made for a particular type of performance. But I just felt there were 3 or 4 good moments in the game where we showed just a little bit more belief and thoughtfulness in the way that we possessed the ball, which made an awful lot of difference on a very hard day.
Sydney.
Hey, Gary, congrats on the win. Let me ask you about Hanley. I saw a stat about him. 8th multi-goal performance since 2020, most in the league. Involved in 25 away goals, 2020, most in the league. Performances like the one he showed today, what kind of message does that send to the league as far as where he stands in the hierarchy of players within the league?
Well, look, if I'm not mistaken, he is in that top echelon of creators and goal scorers. But look, I think we need to just say this: the decisions that are made, whether he's an MVP, not an MVP, that's not my choice. I believe he was last year and wasn't given it, but I may be seeing it through slightly rose-coloured glasses, of course. But the point is this: Hanny came into our group in year 1. And I thought, for the most part, found it difficult to find his feet, to find his way. And he actually came into the group as what we would class as an attacking midfield player. And his explosion onto the scene in year 2, which was last year, was phenomenal. The strides that Hanny made, not only on influencing our group, but influencing the way that the team played, and of course, the way that he is perceived in the league from year 1 was absolutely phenomenal. But he's a forward now. He's he's a forward. He's a goal scorer. He's a creator. He didn't come here as that necessarily. He was an attacking midfield player with a record that never really represented that. There's been a tremendous amount of hard work that's gone into his game. Hanny being the main driving force behind that. The work that he puts in on the training field, astounding. And his relationship with Steve has been just as strong. And I think the combination has given us a player that, as you've rightly put, should be spoken about in any circles as one of the best players in the league, without doubt.
Thank you. We'll go ahead with Claudio.
Gary, thank you, Christina. Gary, in hindsight of the last 2 home games, especially, where you even stated that the team wasn't doing a few of the things that they always do correctly or the same way you desire. When you look at the game today, what is that particular part of the game that Nashville brought back that caused such a special victory? 3-1 is not easy, especially in Washington. And at one point there that I would like to add, I was very pleasantly surprised the way the team started marking up, even with 2 players every time those guys have the ball. And I said that because it's not that the team hasn't done it before. It's just that it was surprising because of the heat. I mean, how did the guys manage to be 2-on-1 most of the time? with that particular ambience? Thank you.
Yeah, look, there's no doubt the last couple of games at home have not been to the standard. We've spoken about that before. I don't need to go over what happened and how we felt. What I will say is this: the week started off, with everyone discussing and highlighting, the challenges of any season, any given season. What are the qualities that are ultimately necessary to be successful? And success is measured in many, many different ways. But for us, success is competing in the postseason, and for silverware, it has to be. So if we're going to be in that world, there's going to be some evolution to our game. There has to be. When you go 24, 25 games unbeaten in all competitions at home, teams will not allow you just to win games. So we've got to find a way to prize open more difficult defenses and more stout groups that come into town. But we mustn't forget the things that have given us a lot of joy in the past have been the real energy and positive nature of our play. And the fact that, in some cases, we've overwhelmed teams with energy and just belief that we're going to get the job done. And we just got the cart before the horse at the weekend. We looked like we wanted to play, and a possession was a tad too slow, and forgot that, the things that we do well are actually to break teams down quickly and get the front guys in the game sharply. And today you saw that a little bit more. Now, is that because we're away from home? Maybe, but it's not easy when you're under pressure. We've seen it before going away from home. I thought we got the balance just about right today. Possession, aggressive nature and competition where we needed to. And when the opportunities were there, we broke with great determination and desire. And there was some terrific execution other than the last goal, because there was a lot of luck.
Tim, do you have any follow-ups?
Gary, you kind of answered a little bit of it there to Claudio's question, but how do you bring this, back-to-back road games with 3 goals? How do you bring that goal-scoring form back home? And obviously, I know you've talked in the past about how kind of visitors play a slightly different style than home teams, but how do you, bring your open game to a point where you guys are scoring those 3 goals or whatever at home?
Yeah, and look, Tim, you've seen enough of our games. There have been some challenging games up until the last 2. The Salt Lake game, for example, was a really challenging game. There were long periods where both teams looked like, there wasn't going to be a breakthrough, and we end up winning 2-0 because there was perseverance, there was a belief, there was an energy. And look, we can make all sorts of excuses. The last 3 games we played have been at 5:00 in the afternoon. And at this stage of the season, it doesn't lend itself to an up and at energetic. This temperature out here today was searing hot. The humidity wasn't as bad as Nashville, but it was. I mean, if I don't wake up with blisters on my forehead, then no one will. The point is, we are moving and have to move in slightly different directions dependent on opposition, at home, away. I've got to make some decisions for maybe home games that I haven't made in the past, certainly in the last year or 18 months. And I've got to be a little bit more thoughtful about, what we're running into. We do an awful lot of work on looking at our opponents, what they might do, scouting, how they might play and the plan of action that they might bring. But you can never get it absolutely right. You can only send the guys out there with, 3 or 4 really important points and pieces that might give us the cutting edge to win any given game. But what we know full well is when this group isn't firing physically, athletically, and in a confident mood with the ball, then like a lot of teams, we look a little bit mundane.
Right.
Yeah, just taking a look at the losses since you guys came into MLS, and 16 of them, but following game after that, I believe the goal differential is about 15 over 15. So just wanted to ask you about the attitude and the professionalism, but most importantly, how you guys are able to shift gears from that. What do you think is at the core, not just in this year's group, but obviously what you guys have built over the past couple of years?
Well, that's actually a wonderful stat. I mean, I didn't know that. What I do know is when we lose, there's a lot of disappointment, as I'm sure there are in loads of places. But, you know, there's also, again, just touching on, you know, one or two things you've said there, there's a strong, experienced core in the group. And number one, they will have seen a lot of the difficulties and the challenges that we've run into. They will have seen games that should have won and lost. They will have seen games that have not played well and lost. And that experience counts for quite a bit when you're coming into these games, away from home, tough environment, and you're looking for leaders and you're looking for players that are not going to be shrinking violence. It was, I felt, very, very important that we saw Walker back in the team. Hugely important we had our captain back in the team. And, of course, delighted to have Randall, who has been part of what we would class as our most successful group on the field. So you're starting to see some of those players come back in at the right time, or together again, which we haven't had for prolonged periods. And when that happens, you see a slightly different picture again. But there is no doubt the group has a very strong constitution, and they don't take poor results well, and the response has been very, very good. And today, to your point, it's added to some incredibly good stats when we've lost a game. But it's actually also a sign, I think, of a good team that, you know, you don't dwell on that moment too long. Your confidence is not dented hugely. You're disappointed, but there's a reaction and there's a difference. If you're dejected and you go out there with negative energy, then you tend to get caught in a little bit of a spiraling effect.
And we'll conclude with Claudio Villalobos.
Gary, how much does today's victory, even though, I mean, any victory is important in the MLS, even home and away, but how much of that you see that feeling in terms of going to Orlando to a tournament where either you win or else, you know, this is different. Yeah. At least on the regular season, you have another chance later on. Whereas going to Orlando is you win or go. How does today's victory make you feel about that game?
The guys are in a great mood. You couldn't not expect that, of course. We spoke about the week that we had ahead. We wanted to focus in on each game. My job is to obviously make sure we get a team out on Wednesday that can get the job done again. But I think, again, to your point, the foundation of the week may well have been based on today. You know, the confidence, the positive energy, the belief, you know, after a defeat at home and you know, such a long spell without a defeat at home could have left the guys in a spot that, you know, might have been very difficult to recover from, you know, in the next game. It wouldn't have been the first time I've seen back-to-back defeats after such a long run of successes at home. But great attitude, great character, and we'll take all of that into Wednesday's game now, and of course on into what will be a tough game against Portland. But one game at a time, we'll go there in confident mood.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now post this and wait for Dan Lovitz to join us. Welcome back, everybody. We are joined by Dan Lovitz, who today scored the opening goal of the evening. How did that happen, Dan?
Oh, I think it was just the culmination of a good sequence of play where we were able to get some pressure on them deep in their half. Alex put in a good ball, and they had a little bit of a mix-up at the back, and it looked like it could pop out. So I held my position, and luckily it got out to me. It was bouncing at a good height and could just strike through it, and happy to see it go in the goal.
We'll now open the floor for questions. We'll kick it off with Claudio Villalobos.
Then, I mean, it's not that you haven't scored before, so this is not something like you're discovering today. But the fact that you've been doing so much for the team in terms of different positions you've been playing lately because of so many reasons, does it give you a different feeling, a better feeling, something extra on the score?
Oh, for sure. I mean, you ask any guy that scores a goal that doesn't score that often, and I'm thinking about scoring a hat trick next game. It makes me feel good. But yeah, to your point, I think all of us sort of wear different hats at times and fill in where we can, and it's about helping the team in whatever way you can. And for me, when I do get in those advanced positions, it's nice to contribute to something you can see on the score sheet that impacts the game. In my opinion, that hasn't happened enough. So the fact that I was able to contribute in that sort of way is great. And it's something that's easy to look at and be happy about, but I think it's more a product of what we're trying to do offensively and get people in my position a little bit higher up the field and able to contribute and take the pressure off of Hani and CJ and guys that play through the middle. So the more we can do that, the better. I think it's a step in the right direction. And, it's always good to be putting the ball in the back of the net, especially on the road. Continue to look forward to doing that, and especially at home.
Sydney.
Hey, congrats on the win today. I did want to ask you about Hanny, and I asked Gary about this a little earlier, and he was talking about the strides that Hanny's made from really year 1 to year 2, and even now to year 3. How does a player like him really make everyone else better on the team?
I mean, it's to your point. I mean, from year 1, that year 1 isn't really a great representation, I think, for anybody. Granted, that was the first year we were together and we were trying to put, a team and a good product on the field with a lot of guys playing together for the first time. And everyone will say we did a good job, but for someone that's getting acclimated into the league like Hani, coming over from a totally different circumstance, that's very difficult. That's a big task. It's a tough ask. But all of us saw him in training every day and we knew what he could do. It would just be more about getting some continuity and having a more fluid year, I guess you could say. And that came in the second year. And, I think his performances spoke for themselves. So what it means for the team, though, is, it's just a luxury when you play with a guy like that. He's so dangerous anywhere he goes on the field, and his freedom to move about and to create danger, mostly through the middle, obviously, where he does most of his work and scores a lot of his goals. But you have defenses that have to adjust to him, and I'm an outside player, and I love watching defenses shift in to guard a guy that's as dangerous as him, because it means I'm going to have more time. And it's, sort of that dynamic, balancing it, trying to be, as dangerous as I can be in my own right, to make sure that I can draw some attention off of him so he can get some better looks at doing what he does best near goal. So as we go forward, it's just a pleasure playing with him and knowing what he can produce, and good things happen to people who shoot the ball. So we love to see him shooting the ball. And although I'm sure he would have liked to see that go in, on his own volition to the top corner, I think he's totally cool with a goal being a goal, and he's just so important for us.
Tim Sullivan.
Dan, congrats on your first left-footed goal. Obviously, you are your entire unit, but you as well are most known for what you guys are able to do at the back. How important is it for this team to reach its potential that, for example, the wing backs, but also some of the other guys get involved in the attack as well?
It's huge. I mean, I don't want to, misspeak and say that we don't value our defensive solidarity and our characteristics that have come to define us in these early years of the club's history and with the team. But, I think all of us strive to play a balanced game and go two ways and be a little bit more dynamic going forward consistently, so that we could, not spend so much of the game, it feels like, sitting back and defending and relying on those good defensive qualities, because as we've seen, it's a matter of time. The law of averages, when you're waiting for bad things to happen, you're absorbing pressure. Sometimes they do. That's just the nature of the game. And I think this year we've seen that a lot, unfortunately. But as we start to hit our stride with the confidence that we get from playing at home, even though right now the balls aren't flying in the back of the net, days like this are very important when we can show that we can be, aggressive in certain environments and do that more consistently. And it takes the pressure off of us. I think our true nature, our best form of ourselves, is a two-way team. We're proud of being defensive, defensively stout. We have a lot of great defenders, and we defend as a team very well. But I think that we don't get enough credit for what we can accomplish on the offensive side of the ball. So it's good to have nights like this.
Ben Wright.
Yeah, Dan, throughout throughout your time in MLS, it seemed like you guys have been able to bounce back really well after a loss. I'm just curious how much emphasis was put on that going into this one after losing against Kansas City, and just how important a characteristic do you think that has been for the team in the first couple of years?
Oh man, I mean, it's super important. I'm not surprised in the slightest. I think the real issue would have been if you came out and saw a flat performance that was uninspired. But it's anyone that follows the team closely enough. It's easy enough for us to say because we're inside of it all the time. We interact with the guys. We know the character. We know what's in our DNA. There was just no other alternative than to respond. And we can't always control the result, but we can certainly control the performance. And we dropped off a little bit. I think everyone would admit in the last few games, especially at home. I think we showed a little bit more edge tonight. We were killers when they would give us opportunities, and we defended some tough moments in transition and in our own box. So that's what it comes down to sometimes. But like you said, it's incredibly important to bounce back from what everyone was very, disappointed in. Something our first loss at home in a very long time. But the show goes on. One game doesn't define us. We showed that, and we know where we're going, and just putting the pieces together now is our focus.
Great, Hills.
Dan, it's good to say that when you score, your team wins. So I know that feels good. 3 of those things. I just wanted to see, compared to Decision Day back in 2020, you scored that one. Which one ranks better today or at that goal?
Oh man, I don't. As long as the team wins, it's the most important thing, and nothing like scoring a goal. Not that I've had the pleasure, but scoring a goal and not having the team win. But it's good. It's just I think guys like me will start to benefit from us starting to be a little bit more comprehensive in the way we attack, getting into good positions, and it's nothing overly complicated. Just me kicking the ball as hard as I could and hoping it, either hit someone and went in, or went straight in, or hit the goalie and blew him through the net, whatever it is. It's just one of those great moments that it's very simple and straightforward, and nothing too elaborate had to occur. So it's a great moment. Very happy. More importantly, it dictated, it sort of represented how we wanted to start the game. And it's always great to have a goal to accompany a good start to the game, but that's not always the case. It doesn't always happen, but it sure does make a difference when it does. And could have been anybody, just happy it was me. Obviously we'd like to do that more often, and we'll look forward to getting into more advanced positions and seeing if we can start making this a trend. I think everyone takes a lot of pride in what we can do offensively and being able to show that more consistently. So again, nights like this are great. Obviously I'm thrilled to have scored, but for everyone on the field, it's good to have 3 goals going back from that.
One final question from Tim.
Dan, I don't know if you're a believer in kind of like season-long momentum sort of stuff, but does this game help you guys build the confidence going into a game where you don't have a choice to draw going into a knockout game on Wednesday?
Sure. I mean, it's a hell of a lot better than losing tonight and then going in and trying to pick ourselves up. I think that's obvious. But of course, man, I think the momentum that builds throughout the season, every journey, every season looks and feels a little bit different. And that's what makes sports so special. We spoke about what the implications of this week were to start with a clean slate and what a few good performances could do for, what we'll consider as a little bit of a lull when we start to come home and get into the meat of the summer. I think starting on the right foot in a game like tonight is really important, and then playing for something meaningful that's not directly, part of the MLS context and the traditional schedule. It's a domestic competition that we haven't had the opportunity to compete in yet. And I think all of us have felt very strongly about our group and what that means to us and how we can be competitive in this sort of format. So we're chomping at the bit. We're excited. We've been to Orlando before. It's going to be a very tough game against an opponent we know relatively well. But of course, it's a great thing to have in front of us after having a night like tonight. So again, we move forward. This is one game. It doesn't define us, just like the Kansas City result didn't define us. It's about the body of work and what we can do moving forward.
Thank you so much, Dan, and everybody for taking the time to join us today. We look forward to seeing you on Wednesday.
Thanks, guys.
Perfect.